Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Andrew Chi, Research Fellow here with the Conflict and Security Development Programme. Let me welcome you this morning to our Africa Session series, which aims to hear from an important voice from the African continent, drawn from the world of politics, business and academia. Today's Africa Session will focus on Tunisia. Recent elections mark the second time in history where Tunisians were able to choose a president. Tunisia is the only country also that has transitioned to democracy after the Arab Spring in 2011. From 2020 to 2021, Tunisia will be one of 10 non-permanent members elected to the United Nations Security Council, promising to support collective action towards peace and security. Tunisia seeks to use this position to strengthen the UN Security Council's commitment towards conflict resolution, particularly in the Middle East and in Northern Africa. The ongoing crisis with Libya continues to pose a security threat to Tunisia's borders, with increased terrorist and refugee activity straining the government's finances and resources. Finally, lacking oil and gas exports associated with other Arab states, Tunisia's economy is heavily reliant on tourism. The tourist industry is not only a source of foreign currency, but employs 12% of the nation's labour force and makes up 50% of the country's trade deficit. I'm delighted to have with us today the Ambassador of Tunisia, His Excellency Nabil Ben Khedher, who addressed Tunisia's foreign policy priorities and outlined how the country is trying to reform itself into a model for democracy across the Middle East and Northern Africa. His Excellency was appointed Ambassador in September 2017. From 2016 to 2017, he was appointed as Ambassador to the President in charge of diplomatic affairs. From 2009 to 2015, he worked in various roles such as Counselor to the European Union, Director to the EU, and Attaché in charge of Europe, Americas and international organizations. From 2007 to 2009, he served as Deputy Director for Japan and East Asia, and from 2005 to 2006 as Deputy Director for Latin America. His Excellency was first posted to the UK as Economic Counselor from 1999 to 2004. This event will be on the record, so I hand the floor over to His Excellency, then we're open for a Q&A session.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chi, and good morning to everybody. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to speak about Tunisia, and I see that Tunisia, sometimes we are not seen enough as belonging to the African continent, so I'm very happy that comes as part of the Africa session of the IISS. So if I may, I will maybe touch upon three points: the democratic transition in Tunisia, Tunisia's foreign policy, and say a few words about our current relationship with the UK. As regards to the democratic transition, I think Tunisia is on the right path. It is a cumulative process. It's not only about elections, although if we look back, we have held a number of elections since 2011. The first one was 9 months after the revolution took place in 2011. We elected National Constituent Assembly, and that assembly had the responsibility to draft a new constitution, so it was completed in 2014. Then we held presidential and legislative elections, and the first democratically elected president was Beji Qaid Sibsi. He passed away in 2019 this summer, and we had then to call for early elections. We held 2 rounds of presidential election and legislative election this year, very recently. And as I am speaking now, the new parliament is holding now its first opening session, and in a few days' time, somebody will be appointed to form the new government. So it's hopefully by the end of this year, early 2020, we have now a new elected president who was elected with over 72% of the vote, and we will have a new government hopefully in place in the coming weeks. So as I said, I mentioned this is as I said, it is a process. Of course, it's not completed. The transition towards democracy comes with lots of difficulties, but we are proud as Tunisians that we have progressed. We have an independent body which supervises the elections. Of course, they are being criticized, but I think altogether they fulfilled their mission. We still need to complete the setting up of some constitutional bodies. For instance, the Constitutional Code that was created on paper in 2014 has not been set up yet for various reasons. We can discuss this later on. As for the political regime in Tunisia, it's mixed parliamentary, between parliamentary and presidential. We wanted to move away from a presidential system because that was maybe, just to cut links with the previous regime in place until 2011. So we wanted to have the president, who is the head of state, has responsibility for foreign policy, defense and security, but all the rest falls under the responsibility of the prime minister or the head of government. So I don't know whether this is the best system for a young democracy. Nevertheless, we're trying now. We don't want actually to touch again the constitution. It's been voted in 2014, and it is seen as a constitution for a modern state and a civil state. After the elections, if you look at the outcome, we don't have any party who won the majority. So that's why there will be talks now, consultations between the parties. The party which came first is the Nahda party, which is seen as an Islamist party. They will have to form a coalition, and this again, it comes with some risks because you have a mosaic of parties, to be honest, and it's not, some of them are from the left, more modernist, secularist parties, and others maybe more conservative. But nevertheless, as I'm speaking, they will start soon formal consultations once the Nahda party will choose its candidate to form the government. If you look at Tunisia at the moment, we enjoy many freedoms, and I think as Tunisians we're quite proud of that. If you look at some of the indexes, Tunisia is ranked first in the Middle East, North Africa region in terms of media freedom. According to Freedom House, it's the only democratic country in the region, which is, again, and I see as Tunisians we value this so much that I don't see how we can go back, because some people say, it is still fragile. Yes, it is indeed, but at the same time I think all Tunisians are adamant, eager that we continue in this process. People ask me always why Tunisia succeeded in its transition. I think there are a number of reasons. Maybe I can mention some of them. A strong civil society, And the status of women is, I think Tunisia is quite advanced in that compared to some other countries in the region. The balanced power between Islamists and secularists, I think this is something that we should mention, and a functioning state or public service. If you look at what happened in 2011, there was no disruption in terms of water supply or electricity. We have institutions that are in place and that are functional. Although we have maybe to look at ways to improve because it's quite bureaucratic. Sometimes it's slow, but at the same time, I think we see that the state has strong pillars and have a civil service, a public service that is has its own ways, to provide services to the public. Maybe I will mention the main challenges at the moment. Of course, security remains one of the main challenges. You have to understand, after 2011, there was dismantling of some of the security apparatus, and so it's always in transitions like that we have to face the problem of the weakening of the state as such, and I think we have addressed this. Although in 2015 we were caught by surprise. We had 3 major terrorist attacks that had caused some disruption to the economy of the country and even to its image. But thanks God, we worked. Our security forces worked well and with international partners to try to tackle the security problem. And one of the major problems is the open border with Libya, and the situation is in Libya being a very unstable one. It had a direct impact on our security and economy as well. So as I said, we worked very closely with our international partners to try to tackle the terrorist threat, because it's not a threat that concerns Tunisia, but most of the countries in the world. And we have, for instance, we have set up, put in place a unique cooperation security mechanism with the G7 countries, which is quite unique, and those countries provided training and equipment. But most of the effort, of course, was made by the Tunisian security forces. And now, since early 2016, we haven't had any major terrorist attack. There were few attempts, but the situation is very much now under control. Maybe the second challenge I see is the economy. You look at before 2011, we had an average economic growth of 5%, but high unemployment and imbalances between the regions. If you look at Tunisia, we have 1,400 kilometers of coasts, and those coastal areas are, those are where there is tourism, there is economic activity. But if you go, inside the country, then you find that the economy there basically is there is no economic activity as such. And then the revolution happened because there was high unemployment among the youth, and this, as I said, discrepancies between regions. So you look at the causes are still there. We have not addressed, I think, in a sufficient way those two main causes, maybe the high unemployment, especially among graduates, and the differences between regions. So this is, I think, now an urgent challenge. And if you look at the results of the elections that took place recently, I think in a way they punished the political establishment because they didn't, the young people didn't see, big change in their daily situation. So this is just to tell you that the situation is still fragile, and we have to address the economic problems. And I hope that once the new government will be in place, there will be a strategy to try to tackle some of these pressing or urgent issues. We are, of course, we understand that we need to reform. We cannot carry on, as I said, that we have to address this urgent situation. So we have to reform. Now Tunisia is under an IMF program, which means that we are being dictated. Maybe it's not the right word, but in a way, IMF is trying to impose a reform agenda on Tunisians, and it is not always seen, as something good for the country. Nevertheless, I think there is an unanimity that we should try to speed up the pace of reforms. And as I said, we are in discussion with lots of our partners, international partners, what would be the best way, for instance, to attract more foreign investment, how to make the economic environment more business friendly. I think of course, maybe you have to take some painful measures in terms of reducing the subsidies for some products, but I see in the long term that Tunisia has really strong assets to become like a gateway to Africa or hub in the region, economic hub. Because we have highly skilled people, we benefit from our closeness from Europe, and I think we have entrepreneurs in Tunisia who are able actually to match any international standards. So I don't see, once the environment, once we have stability, I think we will certainly try. As I said, the political stability is very important, so that the economic actors can take the responsibility and invest more, and we hope that there will be more foreign investment coming into the country. Maybe now I move to the second point, is the Tunisia foreign policy. Tunisia, we have, I think our foreign policy is based on constant principles: non-interference in internal matters, promotion of peace and stability, respect of the rule of law, and the law-based international order, support for the fair causes such as the Palestinian cause. We have always maintained peaceful relationship with our neighbors, Algeria, Libya, and we have always had very good relationships with Western powers. The former colonial power, France, the US, they have always been very supportive. And including nowadays, they are helping us to secure the border with Libya. We don't want to be seen as aligning in favor of an axe against another. We're trying to always Tunisia has never been in conflict with anybody. It's a peaceful country, and it has been, our motto in our foreign policy. We have never had any aggressive approach, and we try to have mutual respect between us and our partners in the region and outside the region. If we look at Tunisia, we have invested heavily in education rather than military. So in terms of the rate, we see in the military they don't interfere with politics in Tunisia, and they certainly are seen with a lot of respect from Tunisians. Maybe the international dimensions of our policy, we belong to the Arab world, at the same time to the Euro-Mediterranean world, to Africa, to the Muslim world. All these are components of our foreign policy. We want now to look at increasingly at Africa to develop our trade, our business. We're trying to bring African students to complete their studies in Tunisia. We are opening up new embassies and new flights, granting visa exemptions to African countries, citizens. We see the Euro-Mediterranean region as strategic to us. We were the first country to sign a Euro-Med association agreement, and we see the anchoring to Europe from the economic point of view as something very strong. As I said, of course, the Arab dimension is a very clear one, and we are an active actor on the Arab scene. We hosted the last Arab summit, and of course we belong to the Muslim world, and as such we have a good relationship with all Muslim countries. So coming maybe to just the Security Council, we will become non-permanent member starting from 1st of January. Is the fourth time that Tunisia will be member of the council, so we have quite an experience to deal with that, and we want to play our role, a constructive role, to deal with some of the pressing issues. I think the top priority for us will be to deal with the problem in Libya, because, as I said, it has a direct impact on our economy and security. We have a list of priorities now for the Security Council. Just quickly: conflict prevention, dispute settlement, promoting of the role of women and youth, the fight against terrorism and violent extremism, UN peacekeeping operations, development and international security, new global challenges. So this is a list. I think there is nothing really, it's quite consensual, so we don't expect to have any problem in trying to promote those objectives during our mandate at the Security Council, and we look forward to working with other members of the Council to try and bring solutions to some of the international problems and conflicts. Maybe quick few words about our bilateral relationship with the United Kingdom, as I am ambassador accredited to the Court of St. James and to Ireland as well. We are now in a very good momentum, and I can compare since my first time here, 20 years ago. From the political point of view, I think Tunisia was not seen as a very interesting country, but now things have changed, of course, with the democratic transition in Tunisia and the political experience that we're going through. We have now new areas of cooperation with the British, with the UK. Security, for instance, we had to deal with this problem. We had a major terrorist attack which targeted innocent British holiday makers in Sousse in 2015. So, as I said, we were caught by surprise, and then all terrorists always look for soft targets, I'm afraid. So, in that case, those terrorists, the terrorists killed 38 British holiday makers, which had, of course, an impact on the tourism sector. The tourism sector accounts for almost 8% of the economy. So we had to deal with the security problem, and I think the British security forces and experts were very helpful. That is one of the sectors. Another sector is higher education. We're trying now to work on higher education and to promote links in the education sector, because we understand that it is a very good investment in the future of our relationship. Of course, trade and investment. We were the first North African country to sign a bilateral association agreement with the UK, and the idea is to try to promote trade and investment links between the two countries. We're starting from a low base, so I expect that in the coming months and years we will see more business and trade between Tunisia and the UK. As I said, tourism was very much impacted. In 2017, the FCO decided to lift the restrictions for British tourists to go to Tunisia, and since that time we're seeing now a recovery in numbers, and by the end of this year we expect to have 200,000 tourists from the UK compared to 28,000 2016. So numbers are going up again, which is a good sign of the recovery of the sector. So I think we look at the UK as a strong partner, and we look forward to more support to Tunisia from the UK, and expect democracies such as British democracy to support Tunisia, because Tunisia, I think, has to be seen as a long-term investment for countries such as the UK. So this is just my presentation here, and what I want more maybe is just to engage in a discussion rather than just me speaking. But we as Tunisians, my message would be that we are confident that we will succeed in spite of the many challenges, that some of the challenges I touched upon. But we are realistic that we will still have to solve some problems, and we look forward to more support and understanding from our partners, be it in the region or outside the region, to understand that this experience, quite unique experience, comes with some challenges, some problems. It's not going to be easy, but I think as Tunisians we have proven that we can, every time we face a problem, we try to find a solution in a peaceful way, and I think that has been our guiding principle so far. And with that, I think I'm open for discussion and to take your question. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I wonder if you could start by, I want to ask you a question. So you spoke about Tunisia's focus towards Africa, engaging more. And I wonder if you could tell me whether Tunisia's approach would be one that is solely Tunisian focused, or one that is more determined by the Arab world.
No, I think we realized that, at some point that although we gave our name to the African continent, because the ancient name of Tunisia when it was part of the Roman Empire was Ifriqiya, Africa is Africa actually. We thought that we have to do more. As Tunisia is not something that is being coordinated with other Arab countries. It's part of our foreign policy. We have always had good relationship with African countries. But if you look at, for instance, where we have our embassy at the moment, it's mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. It's mostly in the French-speaking world because of the special link, language. So now we're looking increasingly towards other parts of Africa where we should be more present, and it's a win-win. Basically, we need to look at the opportunities that are there for our business people, but not only. I mean, we need to be play an active role and we've always had, as I said, very good cooperation, but we need to move beyond, maybe to have try and be more active on the African scene, and that is what we try now to achieve. But it's really something that it's not just to respond to the question. It's our foreign policy is not being something that, but if we can achieve that with other Arab countries, that's good to have Arab-African links as well.
And is there a role, I guess, for Tunisia when it comes to democratic change across the Middle East and Northern Africa in supporting other countries to follow in that same path?
Well, to be honest, no, we don't have the pretension to. It is our model functions maybe in Tunisia, not anywhere else, and we have no pretension to look at exporting our model. That is not far beyond the. What we want to do is just to consolidate democracy in Tunisia, and that is something that has been chosen freely by Tunisians, but we understand each country has its own way, to solve its problems. We don't want to dictate anything to anybody. So this is really a clear-cut answer to say that we just focus on Tunisia. And if other countries want to follow suit, they're welcome to do so. But we don't have any lessons to give to anybody. So we are.
Brilliant. So I'll open the floor for Q&A. So if you just raise your hand and tell us your affiliation as well.
Yeah.
So Rick Grove, I work in the financial markets in New York. I'm also president of the U.S. Friends of the IISS. And I have a son who's a graduate student in New York who worked in Tunis this summer. And when he was there, I had the pleasure of spending time in Tunisia. I met a lot of his young friends who were generally university students. Tremendous pride in Tunisia and in the democratic change in Tunisia, but also concern about economic opportunity. So that brings me to my question. You mentioned foreign investment. What sectors other than tourism do you think are sectors that foreign investors should be looking at in Tunisia?
Well, very good question. There are many other sectors. I mean, tourism is, because Tunisia, is always known, for nice beaches and hotels, etc. But it's really something, that if you look at Tunisia at the moment, we have over 3,000 foreign companies established in the countries and trying to expand their activities. So it means that they're doing business and they're making money. Other sectors, we have to look at manufacturing industries, for instance. We are very competitive in terms of most of the foreign companies. They are fully exporting companies, so it means they work for the European markets or even for the US market. We have the IT sector, a sector that is linked to information technologies and communication technologies. Tunisia now, we're trying to assert ourselves as a good place to invest in. and because the quality of our engineers are very good, is very good, and so we take aeronautics, take automotive components. We have so many companies now working in Tunisia and exporting, as I said, to Europe, and they're doing this, and they even looking at expanding their presence in Tunisia. So we if you go back to the 1970s, we started actually attracting. We were very good at attracting investment from Germany, France, Italy. Not enough from the UK, I'm afraid, but Tunisia has always been a very good investment site. Now that with some of the problems that we had to face after 2011, that maybe investors were seeing Tunisia as quite a bit risky, but now we hopefully I think in the coming years we will see, certainly, because I said that the assets are there. Tunisia is really attractive in terms of because the cost of the workforce is very competitive. As I said, proximity from Europe, it's central location as well, very strategic place in the Mediterranean. For those many reasons, I think we will certainly see a recovery of foreign investment in a very short time.
Yes, Andre Crusoe, intern at the Institute. First of all, I'd like to thank Your Excellency for the great insights provided on the internal dynamics and also strong involvement of Tunisia in foreign policy post its democratic transition. My question are on the main challenges that Tunisia faces, both in the security and economic domain. Tunisia's economy is vulnerable, and young people are susceptible to join domestic terrorist organizations. And my question is, what counterterrorism policies does Tunisia have as a young democracy to supplement its law enforcement and military action?
Well, again, a good question. Of course, to tackle the threat, the problem of terrorism is not only to find a security solution, because you are not going to address the problem. So we're trying, of course, to work on the economy and to try to create jobs for the young people, especially that most of the unemployed are university graduates, and they get frustrated if they don't find jobs. And so I hope that with the reforms now in place, and we're starting seeing some of the signs of the economic recovery. The growth rate is still low, average of 2%, but I think that the estimates is that we foresee an increase in the growth rate. As I said, the economic, I think that is the economic maybe solution. It touches upon many other aspects as well, culture, the Tunisian society is a society it's tolerant by nature, and I think the dramatic change that took place when those terrorists wanted actually to carry out their attacks is that the Tunisian society tried to get immune to that, through being, vigilant with all these terrorist activities, and to try not to allow anybody, to go and target a tourist. So it's the responsibility of Tunisians. Of course, the security, services, security forces are doing a very good job, tremendous job in addressing the situation from the security point of view. But it's more than that. It's more cultural, more social, and I think if the economy, goes well, and the Tunisian society being a society of moderate people, we will tackle this issue of terrorism with the international cooperation as well, because it's not something that is only specific to Tunisia. We have to face this even here in the UK. So is the solution, you have many answers actually, and we are implementing this policy that has multiple dimensions, but it is an ongoing process. I cannot tell you, well, the problem is fixed, not at all, but we have to remain vigilant at the same time to try to implement measures that will try to address this concern.
Thank you, His Excellency. My name is Nabil Ben Khedher. I'm a consultant. You talked about security and then about economy. I would like to link both and eventually talk about informal economy in Tunisia. The past 10 years, there were several attempts to reform and to include informal economy within the formal economy. What do you think we have missed? Because obviously there is not real improvement on this particular side. We know that there is a sociological and anthropological component on informal economy. How do you think we can deal with this issue today?
Well, thank you for a question. It's a complex one,
yeah.
To be honest, if I had the solution. Well, you are absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the informal sector, it represents something like 40% or 50%. That's simply too much. And I think the government has to find a way how to try to attract those people, working in the informal sector. The only problem is then if you look at some of the southern regions in Tunisia, where maybe you have this informal economy and some of the smuggling taking place, with the neighboring countries. I think we have to convince those people that if they come into the formal economy, it's in their benefit. So we have to find a way maybe to open a dialogue with those actors. And I'm not going to say that the problem will be fixed overnight. It is a long process, but nevertheless it is something that we must do. We cannot actually carry on with this, allowing almost half of our economy to be informal, and it means they don't pay taxes, there are no revenues for the government, for the state. So we have to address this, and in many ways. As I said, we need to open a dialogue with those people, and of course those those who are involved in smuggling, and they must become, in a way, they should be some sort of sanctions. They cannot carry on like this. But at the same time, we have to find a way, so that as I said, the problem here is if you go and you try to be too severe, maybe, then people will get angry, and it creates some sort of frustration and instability in those regions which are fragile because of, as I said, the problem of the borders, etc., and the terrorist activities. So I think we have to be serious about that, to have a strategy maybe, and try to implement it with a dialogue, and trying to bring all these people in a room, and maybe just to try to find. So I'm not able to tell you what would be, but I do agree that it is a concern, and it is a problem that we have to deal with quite urgently.
I've got two quick questions, if possible. The Tunisian diaspora is one that is actually really successful business-wise. Why isn't there more being done to incentivize those Tunisians that are abroad to reinvest into Tunisia? And the second question is, there was a lot of people that went to join ISIS from Tunisia. In terms of how will Tunisia deal with it? If you compare it to the way that Europe has in this sense.
Well, first question about the diaspora. I live in a country here where we don't have a large Tunisian community. It's about 12,000 people here. But we have so many successful people working in the city, and whenever I see them and try to convince them that they should look at how to invest in Tunisia, and some of them are actually doing that. How maybe the Tunisian government maybe should think about more incentives. I do agree that maybe sometimes we lack of communication with those people because they have expectations, but they are Tunisian at the end of the day. It's their country. They know that the country is going through some problems, but at the same time going through a quite unique political experience, and those should be actually the first people who will be willing to go and support the country. So now we are appealing to foreign investors to go and look at the opportunities to do business in Tunisia. Normally a Tunisian who got educated in Tunisia, he or she should look at his home country, to go and invest without having special incentives. So I think it's part of maybe the government effort, and it's part of a personal endeavor as well. As for the foreign fighters, it is a concern, of course, because there are many Tunisians who left Tunisia and went to some places where they got involved in terrorist activities, and we have a clear law. Whoever got involved in terrorism inside or outside Tunisia comes under that law, but we have a judiciary. They will look if they come back to Tunisia. We have those lists of people, so we know them. Of course, they will come under the control of the police, and if they get convicted, they will go to prison. It's as simple as that. But the solution is we see that it is not a problem specific to Tunisia. Many European countries face the same, including here in the UK. So, of course, we are aware of that, and there are some elements returning. And every time we have this happening, we have to be careful, and then we take the right measures. But again, it is a problem that we have to follow very closely, especially now what's evolving in Syria and other places.
I'm an assistant research analyst here at WS, and I focus on West Africa. I wanted to know a bit Tunisia's position on what's going on in the Sahel right now. Both if you can talk about what you think are the main drivers of the conflict, and then if you can explain a bit what Tunisia is planning to do, especially now that it's going to be a member of the UN Security Council.
Well, it is a major concern, I think, for our region. I mean, what's going on in the Sahel. The Sahel is a wide region. I think it's as large as Europe. So is not able to tell you exactly, what would be the solution. But we need actually more international cooperation to deal with this problem, which is not specific only to African countries, because at the end of the day, tourism will have an impact on Europe in terms of immigration as well. So, because if those terrorists have the possibility to carry out attacks, in some of the countries. That's going to be even more destabilizing for the economy, for the security. So it is going to be, of course, because we belong to Africa, it's going to be one of the top priorities in the Security Council. But we, as African countries, we are not the only actors. We have to consult with other countries, such as France. France is militarily present in Western Africa, in the Sahara region, and of course, based on excellent relationship we have with Western African countries, we intend to play a constructive role. Although the problem has many dimensions again. And it has been seen not only as a security problem but as a development problem as well. So sometimes people see, the problem as just, the focus on the security, but always, why people look at, taking boats and crossing the Mediterranean Sea, and some of them die in the sea. It's really sad what's happening. Have accounts of people, who, because they don't see any prospects in their home countries. So definitely, the solution should be seen as as a development one as well. Try to help those countries to develop and to attract the young people, to convince them to stay and to contribute to the economy. So that's why it's always, we try to, whenever we address this situation, we always bring our input to say we have to look at the causes as well. The causes of why those terrorist groups are able to recruit, why because of the underdevelopment, of the problems that some African countries are facing. So I think that is our role. Is we will represent Africa with Niger, I think. So we will have hopefully an active presence in those meetings and discussing these issues that we know because we have been through that, or because we have our special relationship with Africans.
Gentlemen.
Yeah.
I'm David Millard. I work for Kelvin Hughes and Hensoldt. We are a technology company that provides solutions into the defence and security markets. Interestingly, we have products that solve border security issues, customs, critical national infrastructure, protect beaches, etc. First point I'd like to make is just picking up on the tourism industry. I'm really pleased we have grown from 20,000 back to 200,000, but it's a plea really, we cannot be complacent. Terrorists target soft targets, and they also target complacency. So we have got to keep being vigilant, and I'm pleased with what I've heard today on that matter. The question I'd like to ask is, in terms of credibility and experience of the new president, if he is responsible for security, how is he actually going to do that? Will people trust him to do that? And can he actually execute the plan? What is his interaction with the government on this? Is he the key decision maker, or does everything need to go through that political process as well?
Well, thank you for your question. I think the new president, he was elected with a vast majority, so he's a popular man, and I think I don't see any problem with trying to change things if there are improvements to be made But when it comes to security, it's not only the president, although it comes under his responsibility. He chairs the National Security Council, and you have around the table those top players, in security sector in Tunisia. So it comes, as part of outcome of every member of the council will bring his expertise and his views on how to tackle the security problems. At the moment, he's been in office for a month or so. I'm not able to tell you exactly what is his view on the security right now. But I don't see any major problem with once the government will be in place. There should be some sort of cohesion and harmony, especially when it comes to security. Because security, as you said, it's something that threatens our existence, even our vital interests. So there is no way that we will certainly remain vigilant. But now we have acquired, I think, the manner how to deal with the security problems. And this, as I said, it's being even discussed with our partners, because sometimes we face common threats, and those common threats have to be addressed collectively. So that's why, for instance, when we will go to the Security Council, we will bring our own experience to the table, and saying that the fight against terrorism and violent extremism shouldn't be dealt with at individual basis as a country as such, but should be coordinated. So just to respond quickly to say I don't see any problem, any conflict of this is a top priority for everybody, and I think the government, whatever the new president has in his mind, I think there will be certainly a harmony in dealing with those issues. It could maybe in other areas I can see different approaches, but for that in that area I think everybody agrees that we shouldn't be we should be really very, very vigilant and try to address any shortcoming we see or deficiency.
I wonder if you can indulge me one last question, which is, given your Tunisia's role at the UN Security Council, whether they'll be playing more of a mediating role in current conflicts that are taking place.
I think the Security Council has its own ways of proceeding, so it means that we will have to consult with other members, and we will be pen holders on some issues. For instance, for West Africa, this is not something has not been decided yet. It's going to be decided once we join the council. But we are interested in few committees and working groups where we'll be either member or share the group. So yes, of course, as I said, one of the top priority, or maybe the top priority, will be Libya for us. But fight against terrorism, peacekeeping operations, and so there will be few issues where Tunisia, where we see we can be of help and bring our own expertise. Then we will certainly try to play do our bit. So I cannot tell you right now where we're going to be active or chairing groups, but certainly we will see this, happening in the early 2020 once we'll have consulted with other members, and as I said, we have a list of priorities here. So we will certainly try to. I can't tell you that we will be active on so many issues, but there will be priority ones where Tunisia intends to play an active role.
Thank you very much, Excellency. That brings us to the end of this session. Can you join me in thanking the Ambassador for being here today and for your engaging questions as well?